Well, after an epic ride up the Douro Valley the previous day, I took the opportunity to enjoy a lovely morning in Porto before my afternoon train to Lisbon. There's a great view of the city, the river, and of the yellow line of the metro as you walk across the Luís I Bridge. Crossing back into Porto, I find myself outside the cathedral and the ancient pillory, which looks great in the winter's sun. And of course, the charm of this old city can mostly be found when you walk up and down its narrow streets. And the old commercial docksides are now given over to tourist cafes and pleasure craft. This has been a lovely mooch about, but I'm going to head over to São Bento now and catch a local train up to Porto Campanhã station, where this journey can really begin. So, whilst I head over to Campanhã, let's have a look at the route for today. The Lisbon train will leave Campanhã station and cross the Douro with an almost immediate stop at Vila Nova de Gaia, and then it's a run down the coast to Aveiro before we wiggle inland to Coimbra. After that, we'll make much more use of the tilting technology on the run south to Entroncamento. And there we'll pick up the river Tagus for the run into Lisbon, where there's a quick stop at Oriente before we roll into the terminus at Santa Apolónia. All being well, our Alfa Pendular should complete the 337 kilometres or 209 miles in just under 3 hours, giving an average speed of 114 kilometres per hour or 70 miles per hour, which across this terrain is not a bad average at all. Now, there's been a station at Campanhã since 1875, although originally trains only served north of the Douro as there was not yet a railway bridge. And these days it's also a major connection point for the metro system, making it very easy for locals to access the mainline trains. The rather lovely old double-height concourse is now where you queue for your tickets. Turning to our right, there's a small shop, some ticket machines, and a waiting room that leads on to a cafe. Oh, and something I've rarely seen at a station, a fruit stall. Now, Campanhã not only sees passenger trains, but it's also a junction for many freight trains that pass through this way. And if we move to the east end, the platforms here are much newer, this being where passengers can transfer to the metro. And it was very quiet on a lunchtime, so I'm guessing these platforms are only used at peak times. Now, our train isn't due for over 30 minutes, so there's still time to have a look around and, watch a few trains go by. And one of the first things we see as we pop up is the lunchtime departure for Pachinho, which is being dragged down to São Bento from the sidings by an electric locomotive. Now, I've already ridden this train the previous morning, so do also check that one out. I'm about to go down to Lisbon on the Alfa Pendular, and still got my first class Interrail ticket, so should be able to ride in first class. In fact, I got my reservation earlier yesterday. Well, day before yesterday, I got my reservation, which was €5, and I've got myself a seat in coach number 2, so should be okay. The very helpful guy at São Bento said that was the best seat, so we'll have to see if his judgment is correct. But anyway, here we go. We're going to go down through Portugal on the Alfa Pendular. So let's see how it goes. Well, this Alfa Pendular has actually started in Braga, so it should be coming down the line up there and then taking us on to Lisbon. So looking forward to this, and hope the train's on time. There's nothing up here saying it isn't, so good news. And here comes our Class 4000 Alfa Pendular EMU. These 6-car trains entered service in 1999, and although they were manufactured by Fiat, they were actually assembled here in Portugal. My fellow passenger demonstrates the lack of level boarding and also the vestibule end luggage spaces. And, as you'd expect from a flagship first-class product, Seats are in a 2+1 configuration and they look pretty nice. As the train leaves, the first job is to cross the River Douro on the St John's Bridge, which was constructed in 1991 to supplement the wrought iron Maria Pia Bridge, which itself dates back to 1877. And once over the bridge we enter the southern part of the city, which is known as Vila Nova de Gaia. A few more people join the train, but the seats opposite remain empty, which will be handy as I can hop over for a look at the coast in a little while. And just down the line, Madalena highlights a recurring feature of the journey, as the railways appear to be rebuilding quite a lot of stations on the line. And with all this infrastructure work going on, we seem to be crawling down the coast from Porto. But beyond Grania, the train finally speeds up and treats us to one last look at the Atlantic Ocean. But the ocean is soon behind us as we turn inland at Esmeriz to discover the Portuguese countryside. And suddenly we're making good speed and we're getting our tilt on for sure. Aveiro is still a major commercial centre and port where the Boco River drains into the Aveiro Lagoon and then the ocean. And the coach has filled up a bit and the lady has been round to offer refreshments from a trolley. But I'll get her on a later pass, I think. And once again that tilt is doing its thing. And by the way, it's not really noticeable unless you're actually looking out of the window as it corners. And you may have also noted on the map how bendy this route is, so this is a real boon. And we slow down for Pampilhosa, and I really wish I'd got a better shot of that signal box. This is a major junction where the Baia Alta line heads off eastwards through Guarda to Villa Formoso on the border and eventually on to Salamanca and the rest of Spain. It really is great to enjoy these views of Portugal from the comfort of the Alfa Pendular as we leave the region of Aveiro and enter Coimbra. At Sosilas there's a little line coming in from the right, which actually leads to a huge Simpor cement plant that is a good deal bigger than the town itself. And right on cue there's some cement wagons headed by a Class 4700 Siemens Euro Sprinter, waiting for us to go on ahead, no doubt. Coimbra is a beautiful and ancient city built beside the Mondego River, but we will be treated to none of that, as through trains like ours stop at the slightly out-of-town station known rather uncreatively as Coimbra B. With a name like that, I was surprised to read that this is in fact the original station in the city, known locally as the Old Station, having been opened in 1864. There wasn't a station in the city centre itself until 1885. That one is now called Coimbra, but apparently the locals still call it the New Station. Anyway, enough of that. Our sights are set firmly on Lisbon, which means we'll avoid the main city and immediately cross the Rio Mondego. And it's time for a quick seat tour. Right, legroom is fine unless you put your bag in the way like I did, and there's a footrest for people that like or need them, as my neighbour here is demonstrating. And every seat gets a European-style plug and a mini bin, and a vast and sturdy tray table with a seat back pocket. The blind itself is powered and operated by these controls, and there's also a kotuk or two up top. The luggage rack is reasonable rather than large, and the underside features reading lights. In the retractable armrest is a button to operate the recline, which is okay, and also there's an ancient entertainment system which of course nobody accesses anymore. But the most important thing to report is that the seat is very comfortable for this journey length and the cabin is pretty quiet at speed. Well, let's have a little wander round, and I always love trains with a speed indicator, and here there's large areas for putting extra cases, and they do come with integrated security cables. And stepping through, our coach number 2 is right next to the cafe bar, which is in coach 3. The second class is very busy now, so let's just peek in. The cafe itself was nice enough and the prices were pretty reasonable. And all this time we have turned and tilted through Portugal on our way south. Maybe one day this will be a very different journey, as there are plans to build a dedicated high-speed line between Porto and Lisbon. But the first phases are only planned to complete late in this decade, so we'll have to see how it all goes as time progresses. And then we roll through Entroncamento, which I'm sure many of you know translates into English as just junction. And it still is an important junction as trains head east from here up the Tagus Valley and also east to Badajoz in Spain. As befits such an important rail junction, there are a number of rail yards and workshops here. And also this is the home of the Portuguese National Railway Museum. And here's a super little clutch of old locomotives. South of Entroncamento we have to slow a little for what looks like track renewal work, but it isn't long before things get back up to speed. And it's now that we begin to run on the right bank of the Tagus all the way down to Lisbon. The broad valley provides a home to some intensive agriculture, but I just hope that there's enough water for them later in the year. Lovely though this January weather is, I suspect the locals would like to see just a little bit more rain. And the train squeezes between the houses of Santarém, and then the Tagus is there, spanned by another Louis I bridge. This triangle at Setil marks the junction with the Vendas-Novas line, which is the last line to cross the Tagus until we now get all the way through to Lisbon. This is now the fastest stretch of line, with much of the line speed along here being 220 km per hour. The A10 highway crosses the marshy ground around the Tagus on stilts on a very long viaduct indeed, and then suddenly we come to a stop. But it isn't for long before we restart to make our way through the industrial and maritime northeastern zones of Lisbon. Although there's still space for some pretty riverside towns. Alhandra is another town and station dwarfed by a Simpor cement plant. They've actually been making cement at this site since 1894. So as we approach Lisbon, let's talk prices. Now, I had to pay just €5 for a seat reservation because I was travelling on an Interrail ticket. But if you're booking a few weeks in advance, there are still some decent deals to be had as an ordinary traveller. The normal prices of €47.40 first and €33.90 second can be reduced to just €28.50 and €20.50 if you can get one of the advance tickets. But, like in the UK, these can sell out closer to the day of travel. Beyond Santa Iria we pass a major rail freight container terminal, and then soon we slow to enable our first stop in Lisbon at Oriente. I will be leaving Oriente on another journey on the channel soon, so we'll have a much closer look at the station and the area around when I return. But for now, a number of passengers have alighted, and then we're going to press on for the last couple of miles to Santa Apollonia. This has been a very pleasant ride on the Alfa Pendular, and I would certainly recommend it to you. But do let me know in the comments if my experience has been different to yours. And we roll into Santa Apollonia spot on time at 16:30. And it is a lovely little terminus station, which I understand was opened in 1865 to replace a temporary structure from 1856. And I'm sure it's been improved and expanded quite a few times since then. But this booking hall still looks pretty lovely. Anyway, I digress, and also Johnny has wandered off to the end of the platform again. And welcome to the end of the platform at Lisbon Santa Apollonia. And wasn't that a lovely little run? The old Alfa Pendular did its thing. It tipped left, it tipped right, and it was zooming along at about 200 kilometers per hour in lots of places, and a very comfortable ride. So that's a big Hoover thumbs up for that one. There was a lady bringing snacks and drinks that you had to pay for, I had to hasten to add, but they were all very reasonably priced. I think the Edit Suite guys have probably put something underneath about the prices of things. With any luck, you know, I'll ask nicely, see if they can. So I'm going to be spending the evening now in Lisbon. I've got about a 50-minute walk over to my hotel, and I think I will walk because, well, A, I've never seen Lisbon, and B, I've been sat down for 3 hours, so I could do the exercise, and that's not a lot of luggage to carry. I'm only here for four days. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little run from Porto to Lisbon on the Alfa Pendular, and if you did, give it a like, and also subscribe if you haven't, but I'm sure you have by now, haven't you? Give us a comment as well. Have you travelled on one of these, or have you travelled on different trains in Portugal? Let me know what your experience was. But right now, from Santa Apollonia in Lisbon, it's goodbye, and thank you very much for watching. And if you'd like to see me tick off one of those bucket list trips, then click here to watch the previous day when I took a ride up the Douro Valley.